Hi everybody, I'm Yoonj with MTV News, and today we are going to discuss sex, sexuality, and how they impact women's mental health. Joining me are 8 incredible women from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. Thank you all so much for joining, and let's dive right into it. For the room, do you feel sexually liberated?
As a trans woman, it's really hard to feel sexually liberated because we're always fetishized, and the way that we're portrayed in the media is like we're all sex workers, or someone is sneaking with us behind someone's back, which is not actually who we are. I've been in normal relationships with heterosexual men for years on end. It took a long time for me to get to where I'm at now, because I always felt like I was acceptable to the pleasure of someone else, and I always forgot about my own needs and wants. And now I realize this is my world, and if you want to come and deal with anything that has to do with anything over here, you have to play by my book, or we don't play at all.
Totally. If I'm not feeling pleasure, you should not feel obligated to feel pleasure before me or without me. I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't, stress the importance of intersectionality in sex and how race affects all that. Because even with the stereotypes, I'm sure each of us with our identities must face, oh my God, it's just insane how much society projects that onto us. Have you had experiences in the bedroom where you felt like the partner wanted you to be something you weren't?
I want to get out of that stereotype of that all trans are these uber masculine machines that they're gonna sneak on you behind the corner and pin you down, and that's not gonna happen. And we need to get rid of that stereotype. Trans women are women who like to be treated like women, just like every other woman that's walking on this planet Earth. Period.
I actually have done research specifically for Black women, talking about the historical perspective of what Black women have had to deal with from slavery to now, and how those generational beliefs and the impact that it has had on our mental health, on our bodies, on the way other people of other races view us, how we view ourselves, what it means to be a woman, how we're supposed to act. And so there's still a stereotype of what pleasure is supposed to look like for women. There is still a stereotype of what sex conversations should look like. And I think that's how you become sexually liberated, is growing through those uncomfortable conversations, talking about things that you were told in church never to talk about.
Yeah, sex education is so important, but so much of it is heteronormative and often white facing and, caters to the male gaze. I'd love to hear from you, Jasmine. When was the first time that you learned about girl on girl sex or queer sex, and how did that affect you?
When I first learned about queer sex in general, it was from a very TV, movie, porn, what this is what it looks like, this is how it's supposed to sound and feel, and blah 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 blah. But as I've gone through my own experiences and kind of going a little bit with what Ashley was saying through communication, just realizing that I'm gonna like different things, I need to communicate that. I'm gonna hate some stuff, I need to communicate that. I go into sexual experiences, I'm not assuming. Please don't assume anything about me. I'm not gonna assume anything about you. Let's actually have a conversation so we don't have to assume, and see what each other likes. Because at the end of the day, one of my favorite things is just making someone feel good. So what does that mean to you?
The thing that I say the most on every sex video that I do is have a conversation, get consent first. And this goes even just for lesbians, more masculine lesbians has a stereotype of pulling out the strap and just, whatever. Not every woman likes penetration. So I say, have a conversation, go into every human as if it's a blank slate. and work that out.
Yeah, I just want to touch real quick on what Amber and Jasmine said as a queer woman, because very typically in sort of normative hetero relationships, you don't have that conversation. You just kind of fall into sort of these pre-made power dynamics and structures, right? And as an Asian woman, I think I've experienced that too, like in the bed, having, you know, bedroom people having the expectation of me being submissive, right? And that brings a toll on you, right? And so I think really the idea of liberation and what that connection is really being able to feel safe in your body. Because if we don't get our together, right, we can never really evaluate what's going on in the world in a way that can actually make us really be fully present and experience all that goodness that comes with sex.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much. Is there something you would tell your younger self about how to take care of your mental health while enjoying sex?
Don't use sex as an escapism. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, so I had a lot of intrusive thoughts, and that's very similar to anxiety, and masturbating, almost being addicted to masturbation, addicted to sex, because it was when all the voices, all the thoughts would shut off and be away, especially quite hard and hardcore violent sex was the one where I was so oversensitized that I wouldn't think about the bad thought. And it wasn't necessarily a crux, but definitely becoming codependent on my partner for sex and making that the basis of our relationship. Thanks to an amazing therapist, shout out my therapist, you're amazing, have I been able to realize that it's just my poor mental health that has made me feel like that has made me feel like I need to have sex to be happy, to feel good, rather than finding and training myself and using other tools to make myself feel good through other means.
Something that I would teach the youth is don't seek for validation within outside of other people. Seek with it within yourself. Be comfortable within your own self and your own body and know what you want. And then proceed to do your interactions with other people. Don't do anything that you're not interested in, that you're not ready for. Discover yourself and your body first and what you want, and then go on that adventure to try to discover that with other people and share that with other people.
Vibrator, honey. If I knew, listen, I wish we normalized giving youth vibrators and different toys. Maybe, you know, vibrator is a go-to. If I would have had a toy when I was younger and I knew that I could give myself an orgasm, that I was in control of my orgasm every single time, I think that would have been something I would have really, really valued. And I hope we normalize that conversation more with the youth of just kind of, you can have your own orgasm whenever you want. Whenever you want. It's yours. It's yours. It's your thing. You can do it anytime. And it's your power and you have complete control over it.
Absolutely. That's something we don't talk about enough with orgasm, the importance of doing it yourself. So when's the first time you discovered female masturbation and how did it affect you?
I felt so icky with the thought of masturbation for my whole life until like a couple years ago. Because I'm such a pleaser, I was thinking that loving on myself was not, it wasn't, I guess my worth was in what I was giving others. It got to the point where I started thinking about pleasing myself as a negative, as a bad thing. It's like, oh, well then I must not be having great sex or something if I need to do this. And so coming into that and realizing that, no, this is part of my self-love and something that should be in my routine, completely changed my mindset and how I felt about myself. And that was literally around the time that I started to get comfortable talking about sex.
Just going off of what Amber was saying, and this kind of mixes in with the what I would tell my younger self in general, is that like, I am worth feeling pleasure. Like I can feel that, you know? And I think for so long, society with women in general, and then adding on women of color, Black women, everything, we are told that the pleasure lays in somebody else's hands, you know, like we are there as a service. Like there's not many things that depict like what pleasure can look like for just you alone. We see enough of it on like what cis men are supposed to like do and how they can get pleasure, but not really for women, and that we deserve it, period. And so that's what I would tell my younger self, and just figuring out now and just being like, oh, I don't have to be ashamed of this. Like, I deserve this pleasure.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say, is that just knowing that it's not shameful. So as an educator, of course, we try to tell people that, masturbation, at a young age is not unhealthy. It's not bad for children. It's not bad for youth. It's sexual exploration. But I think that as I got older, as I started learning about the difference between sex education for prevention and sex education for pleasure, then why wasn't I tapping into that? So I think I would tell my younger self to, be more bold, be more accepting of who I am, and not sort of like being a coward. And I say coward as a way of thinking of myself as, what are other people going to think of me? Like, am I going to be judged? And saying, who cares what they think and how they view me, because it's not about them. And my lived experience has nothing to do with how they view me. It's all about how I view myself, what makes me feel comfortable, what makes me feel good.
I'm sure that fetishization is something that everybody has experienced, as we've kind of touched on earlier. So was there a time when you felt fetishized by a partner for who you were, whether by race or profession, and any takeaways?
Let me chime in here real quick. The sex workers.
Go for it.
People treat sex workers, when they find out that you've been a sex worker, like, oh, she used to be a sex worker? Oh, okay, I can just treat her any kind of way I want, or I can expect to have oral sex, or I can expect all these things because, well, she sold sex before, so that means if I love her, then I just get to use her and have all this access to her because no one else loves her, because she's a sex worker. And I just like, sex workers deserve love, they deserve relationships, they deserve happiness, and that just because you do your job does not mean that your personal life, you don't deserve respect in it.
I also think that when you're in a contested body or you're in a non-normative body, sometimes you're taught that the fetishization is the only access you have to any kind of sexual gratification at all. I'm getting emotional listening to everybody just talk about the different ways they've found empowerment within a system and a society that has such a narrow definition for what our sexuality can be and what our sexual expression can be. I remember that the hair coming up on the back of your neck when you realize that like the last 3 girlfriends, the dude's like name had an Indian name too, and you're like, wait, what? Like, why were they all Indian? Like, what is your problem? And for me, empowerment was not about what I was going to do sexually. It was what I was refusing to do. It's what I would no longer do, because I knew I deserved more than that.
We kind of like went across the spectrum just now because we're all from such diverse, amazing backgrounds. I want to hit on one last one, Kim, if you don't mind sharing, if you felt fetishized as an Asian woman or an AAPI woman.
Yeah, absolutely. Story of my life, girl. It's like fetishization also goes hand in hand with consent. I'm in a partnership now, but like on the dating apps, like how many people like can relate to the fact that we've gotten unwanted DMs, pics, all the things. And I think that there's so much with fetishization that takes away from just the humanity of who we are as women, right? Again, it's about that power and having power over us. And as an API woman, I mean, I think that it's so prolific on so many different levels, both in America in a racial sense, right? From a dynamic from a white male gaze, but also it goes back centuries, right? We have been, in sex work as concubines, right? Except at what we weren't paid. That was just like sexual slavery at the time, right? And so it's really understanding like what our bodies have inherited as women, right? What our ancestors have inherited and had to endure. And for us to know when we show up, like to really, really prioritize our safety first in our bodies and our pleasure, right? And like, that's the best thing we can do, I think.
That's so true. And I think you summed up our points so nicely. Like when it comes to sex and pleasure, the most important things should be our personal safety and comfort. And so hopefully this conversation opens up more open and honest dialogue between women and between partners about our sexual expression. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to everyone who watched.
Make sure you catch part 1 of the Sound On conversation discussing social media, success, body positivity, and how each impacts our mental health. Head over to MTV News' YouTube channel for more.